What's up, guys? The big blockbuster deal went down between the Florida Panthers and the Calgary Flames. We all know that. Chris had to cover that one alone. He did a fantastic job. Very surprising deal in terms of two 100-point players in the 2021-2022 season last year to be traded for each other. Obviously, Mackenzie Wieger was a part of that deal, a first round pick, and a prospect, Schwindt, was a part of that pick. But today we're discussing a topic that has been, debated on Twitter and on other social media platforms, which is, was the return for the Calgary Flames way too much in terms of acquiring a guy like Matthew Tkachuk? Did Florida overpay for Matthew Tkachuk, or was he worth all those players and prospect and pick? So we have Colby Guy today. He covers the Florida Panthers for Hockey Now in Florida, and we're honored to have you and to have your take. Since you cover the Florida Panthers yearly, and let's get this started.
Yeah,
So,
nice to get on with you guys today.
thank you. And what were your initial thoughts when the deal went down between the Panthers and the Flames?
Yeah, it was a pretty big shocker. I mean, this happened at 11 o'clock. I got the phone call that things were happening, and then I had to start getting ready for this to happen. And I mean, at first, when you hear a name like Jonathan Huberdeau getting moved and pieces like Mackenzie Wieger in the same deal to get a guy like Matthew Tkachuk, it's a bit of a shocker. I mean, especially with a guy like Huberdeau on the move. It was believed all summer that he was going to re up. He's going to be the guy that the franchise wants there for the rest of his career. He said nothing but wanting to be on the team for the rest of his career. So, like, the initial shock of it, you're kind of just left in complete shock. And I mean, especially it happening so late at night, it happened pretty quickly. But I mean, that's what Bill Zito wanted to do when he found out a guy like Matthew Tkachuk was available on the open market, that he was willing to part ways with anything he could to get him. And that included a guy that previously was looked at as an untouchable guy that you wanted to build around.
And Chris, I know you're the one that covered the breakdown for us, and we all watched the video, and you were in complete shock for the first 5 minutes. You couldn't believe that that deal went down.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, for like, if I would have expected maybe Jonathan. Already it's a shocker that Huberto got traded, but to have four pieces go the other way, for one guy, that's what most surprised me. I mean, if it was Huberto, a prospect and a first, I'd kind of be like, okay, I could see that. But I mean, Mackenzie Weegar, I think, is an absolute beast of a defenseman. I know some people in the comment section, where Florida fans kind of disagree, on that point, which I find it's a bit odd. I think he was a pretty good defenseman. Uh, but yeah, I think it's overpaying for sure. I get why the move was done. Like Colby mentioned, right before we started this podcast, it's they wanted to get younger, and Huberto was asking for a lot of money and for long term, and the guy was 30 years old. Uh, Towards the decline of his career, having that contract, it could kind of hurt the franchise, which I totally understand. Uh, but keep in mind, they also gave away a pretty solid prospect, and a first round pick, which could end up being another great player for the Calgary Flames. I get why the move was done. Was it an overpay? Sure. Uh, the only thing is, does Matthew Tkachuk really produce the same amount of points as he did in Calgary this past season in Florida? Uh, that's kind of a big question mark for me there. I don't really see that potentially happening. Uh, but I'm open to hearing other people's thoughts on that one, maybe.
I mean, look, in terms of like the whole Kachuk deal, okay, we all know he didn't want to commit to the Flames. Once Huberdeau and Mackenzie Weegar were traded to the Flames, people were saying, why did we just acquire rentals? Why did that happen? Right? It just didn't make any sense because you already know that, in terms of Calgary, if those two guys do not resign, then what happens? That means those two guys walk away for nothing, just the way that Gujo walked away. And obviously, dealing with the Tkachuk situation, obviously you got assets, but if those assets are not given an extension past this season, then all you have is a first round pick and a third round pick, which was Schwind, the prospect that that they received on their end.
Well, I kind of disagree with the whole like their rentals thing, and they lose this trade because of the rentals. Nothing stopping them from like flipping them again and getting. If Jonathan Huberdeau is worth 2 first round picks and maybe another player, and he's worth a lot in return. So, and Mackenzie Wieger too. If they decide not to keep him, they could always flip them. I highly doubt they went and get these players. Uh, without at least one of them coming back at least. And staying in Calgary. I highly doubt they both leave in the free agency after the season. If that were to happen, uh, I'd be extremely shocked. I think they'd be moved rather than them staying and until the end of the year and then walking away.
Colby, I would like to address what you wrote, what you retweeted actually, or quoted by Matthew Tkachuk during his press conference today, saying that he hates Edmonton, but he hates Tampa Bay more. We all know he joins the Atlantic Division, which Brady is a part of since he plays for the Ottawa Senators, and we would like to have your thoughts on that. How does that feel, or once hearing that from a new acquired player getting ready for the Battle of Florida?
Yeah, I mean, just throughout his press conference, he really kind of just made focus that he's a guy that wants to bring personality to this team, and it's something this team hasn't necessarily had because a lot of their top players over the last few years have just kind of been quiet, like a Barkov or even Huberdeau hasn't been the most eccentric. So he kind of wants to breathe life into the franchise, and as he was saying, it's not necessarily a market people think about. So he kind of wanted to bring the swagger there and give some billboard material over there. But I think he's the type of guy this team needs.
And also addressing what you tweeted, you were saying that whoever said there isn't a lot of media in Florida was lying, meaning that there was a lot of media coverage in terms of Kachuk. Is it like, and that referring to what you just said right now, he brings a lot of personality, and you also tweeted that every since I came here in my rookie year in 2016, it's grown a lot. I think I could help that. So essentially, this is going to be a guy that's going to be fantastic for marketing, but also the game he brings to the Florida Panthers as well.
Yeah, like he's the guy that brings confidence on the ice, and I mean, like I've heard from a lot of different people, he is the NHL's unicorn, which means he can do just about anything on the ice. He makes big plays, he shoots, he makes big passes, and he can get physical. He gets under the other team's skin. He does basically anything you'd ask him to. And to have that kind of persona on the ice that's kind of larger than life and someone that can get someone interested, I think that's something that really helps.
And in terms of Huberto and Wieger, they were saying that they're open to signing long-term deals with the Flames. Do you think that is a um, quote unquote like lie? That's just something that to say to the media, so there's not a lot of speculation heading into the season, so you don't have to deal with that. Or do you really think that they want to be a part of the Calgary Flames market?
Well, it's something that they're thinking about, and I wouldn't necessarily call it a lie, but I mean, the last couple of days has been a pretty big whirlwind for them because it came out of left field. It wasn't something that was discussed by them. It was Bill Zito seeing that Matthew Tkachuk was on the block and making a move for him. They didn't really take into consideration them. So right now they're at a place where maybe they're open to considering it because Calgary was a team that was willing to go after them and willing to take them on, but they're in a state of shock right now, obviously. So there's a lot of things these guys are thinking about, and if they enjoy their time in Calgary, they probably will be able to sign a long term extension. I wouldn't necessarily say they're lying.
And also to add to that, Matthew Tkachuk was saying that he felt that he did it the right way in terms of how he left the Calgary Flames. Um, a lot of people were poking fun at the Flames, saying that they're totally screwed. They're not going to be a competitive team. They lost Gujo, they lost Kachuk. And then we see this big deal unravel. We all thought that he was going to St. Louis. There was rumors that the proposal included Scandella, Tarasenko in a first. Then there was rumors saying that Cairo at one point was a part of discussions heading to Calgary. Ultimately, that did not transpire, and you have um, the Florida Panthers who come out of left field and get him. And I think we could all agree here that we did not have Florida as a top three destination spot for Kachuk, especially considering, how active they were at the trade deadline, how many assets they got rid of. To part ways with Huberdeau, who was a fan favorite. If I'm not mistaken, he was the best point leader for the Florida Panthers. Um, and now you're parting ways with him. Mackenzie Wieger, a late bloomer, but somebody that worked very well with Aaron Eggblad on the power play. Um, People are thinking actually that Wieger is going to slow down, that he's not going to be as productive as he was at Florida. But other people also think this is the right move because they address a hole that Mark Giordano left, which was the lack of leadership and stability on defense in terms of a leadership role and a guy that could be regarded as a number one defenseman for the Calgary Flames at the moment right now. And what are your thoughts on that? Can Uyghur be that guy for Calgary?
Yeah, I mean, first off, even when Johnny Gaudreau left and you're adding in some of the guys they got from the Kachuk trade, that's still a very talented team, and you have a extremely good coach in uh in Daryl Sutter that they're gonna be competitive next season. Like, there's Elias Lindholm, who's extremely underrated in the fact that he is such a good two-way guy. He makes plays offensively, and then you're looking at a guy like Andrew Mangiapane. There's a ton of guys up and down the lineup there, and I think they definitely have a team that can be competitive. And you're adding a guy like Jonathan Huberdeau, who was in MVP talks. It's basically their Johnny Gaudreau replacement. And if he resigns, great. But if not, I mean, you can trade him off for other assets. And when he plays this year, it'll feel exactly like Johnny Gaudreau's there. And then as far as Mackenzie Weegar goes, yeah, sure, Florida fans are like dogging on him at some points because of some of the mistakes he made during the playoffs last year. But he's an aggressive style of defenseman that tries to make things happen offensively, and he'll get back and make plays defensively as well. And he's a guy that you definitely can build your defense around, and it's a significant boost to Calgary's defense. So I think you're getting a lot in both these guys.
And in terms of the deal that Matthew Tkachuk signed with the Florida Panthers, 8 years at 9.5 million, if I'm mistaken, do you think that is fair value, or do you think that's an overpayment?
Yeah, it's very fair value for what Matthew Tkachuk is. He's coming off of 100+ point season. Even if he has a down year, that down season looks like about 80 points, while the guy is out there frustrating the hell out of your opponent. So really, I think 9.5 is very fair value, especially if you're looking at what they were possibly going to have to pay Jonathan Huberdeau if he asked for a little bit more than 10 million, and then also what you're going to pay Mackenzie Wieger as well. That leaves Florida with a lot more cap flexibility than they would have if they would have been strapped to the contract extensions that they would have had to be strapped in when you're looking at Huberdeau and Wieger. So I think it's very fair for both sides. Kachuk gets what he's worth, and the Panthers are left with some flexibility. They'll be able to bring in once the buyouts from Keith Yandel and Scott Darling calm down next year. They're gonna have a lot of money to bring in a replacement for Mackenzie Weegar.
And yeah, sorry, Chris, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, do you see maybe a potential other trade possibly happening since they're still, not at the cap? I think they're still, they're still $3 million. They're $3 million over the cap, and do you maybe see another trade possibly happening before the start of the season, for the Panthers? And if so, then who?
It's possible. Yeah, it's possible, but the Panthers can easily remedy that by putting Anthony Duclair on LTIR after the Achilles injury he suffered. But I think if they're trying to bring Duclair back during the season, they might have to trade off a guy or two to bring him back. But if they're trying to go the whole Kucherov route and bring him back during the playoffs, then you're kind of in the clear. But it just depends on his recovery and if Anthony Duclair looks good to go in February, which is just about where they're pinning him to be able to play, then they're going to have to think about it.
And I know a lot of people are saying that they were very happy with this deal because obviously there's all kinds of emotions when a deal happens like this, right? And there was one side of people saying that they like this deal because, going back to what we were saying, the extension for Huberdeau, he is 30 years old. If he's going to sign a long-term deal, let's say for an 8-year deal, 7-year deal, will he still be able to put up the production that he is right now? But in terms of Kachuk, you're getting a guy who's 5 years or 5 to 6 years younger, and you know that he's capable of getting 100 points because he did it. And he's going to be playing alongside Carter Verhaeghe and Barkov on that first line. He's going to get power play minutes. He's going to be on the power play with Aaron Ekblad as well. We all know that Florida is one of the top offensive teams in the league at the moment. In terms of Calgary, they're very we have a defensive minded coach in Daryl Sutter, but they had two guys who got 100 points in Gujo and Kachuk. So I mean, I don't think it's a question in terms of can Kachuk do it again. I think it all comes down to, okay, we get a younger guy, let's pay him the money, let's give him the term because he's younger, so it makes more sense. We're not going to be stuck with a contract that hurt us long term in Huberdeau's contract.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you're looking at the first 4 or 5, maybe even 6 years of Huberdeau's contract, I think you're looking at close to the same production he had last year. Maybe a little bit of a drop off, obviously, because you're not going to get 115 points every season, but you're going to get some solid production out of him for at least, I'd say, 4 more years. But you're looking at the back 4 years of that contract when he gets up to 35, 36, 37 years old, then you start to get a little bit concerned about paying a guy $11 million. And if that production drops off, then you're a bit worried, which was kind of why Florida wasn't as into paying him that much for that length of time. So when you're getting a guy like Matthew Tkachuk, who's 24, sign him to an 8-year deal that runs out when the guy is 32, it gives you more time whether you're confident in a guy to still have the same type of production. And you can confidently say that his production will last the entire 8-year deal. So I think that's what they're thinking. And having a guy that you will be in his prime for the entire contract, that extends the cup window as well.
And obviously, with this move made by Calgary, it looks like they have a window to win the Stanley Cup, but it's a short-term window. As of the Florida Panthers, they have a long-term window now, adding a younger guy in Kachuk. Do you agree with that?
I mean, Calgary's window could depend on a lot of things too. Like if they're not happy with where negotiations are with Wieger and Huberdeau, they're able to get out of that and get a lot of young assets for a guy like Wieger or Huberdeau at the deadline to be able to kind of reset the clock even more and extend their window a little bit more. If they get some young pieces that will help them build the contender, and they already have a solid foundation. So if they don't like where negotiations are, they definitely have that option. So I mean, with both those guys at 1-year deals, both those guys incredible players. I wouldn't necessarily say Calgary is win now because if something happens, they're able to reset the clock.
Also, just to add for the Calgary, for Calgary fans out there, I was actually going to mention this, but Vogan Poetry in the comments here brought it out. Calgary would fit the bill It's so perfect. It's so perfect. It can never be. Uh, I mean, I think they have the money to sign him, and if they do get Kadri, I mean, that just solidifies their team even more. And if they do end up maybe moving either Wieger or Huberdeau towards the deadline, if there's like maybe no contract negotiation or no like possibility of that towards the end of the year, uh, then they could probably get another player with a bit of longer term to even play for the season after. Uh, knowing that you have at least two decent centers, for the foreseeable future. So
And in terms of like also, the deal, something that we haven't been really talking about is the prospect they got. And since you covered the Florida Panthers, what type of prospect are they getting, the Calgary Flames, in terms of Schwint?
Yeah, Cole Schwint is probably one of the more underrated guys that the Panthers have had in their system, and he did step up and play a couple of games last year, but he's a big kid. He can move, and he can really compete at the NHL level. And like Huberdeau said during his introductory press conference, he thinks he's close. He can be a contributor, but I think somewhere down the line, he can be a solid middle six forward that can play two ways, can score a few goals, drive the net. So I think Calgary is getting a pretty quality player there in Cole Schwint.
And Chris, in terms of you as well, I know you thought it was an overpayment, but you know, let's say the Florida Panthers, right, guys, do not have the season that they had last year. And maybe with the Atlantic being so good this year, you look at the likes of the Ottawa Senators, who had Giroux, the Brinkat, get rid of Matt Murray, and then you also look at Detroit, Andrew Kopp, David Perron, Villa Huso, and now you look at the Florida Panthers without Mackenzie, Wieger, and um, Jonathan Huberdeau. Does this make them weaker in a division that has gotten stronger? And not only that, is it possible that this first round pick may have a lot more value, if they fail to, fall a little bit down in terms of standings?
well, listen. Huberto missing. I mean, listen, Tkachuk replaces him essentially, so it's more a question of Uyghur's kind of the guy that's out. I mean, does it hurt the defense of the Florida Panthers? Obviously. Um, the question is more injuries because I know uh, Ekblad is very injury prone. So the thing is that if he goes down, or is the defense gonna be somewhat decent, in the dog days of the NHL season of where it's time to make the playoffs because like you said the competition's very fierce this year. Got a lot tougher in that division. Um, you got Toronto, you got Boston somewhat still, trying to make a push. Ottawa is a powerhouse. Detroit improved even more. Uh, so a lot. The thing is will the defense be somewhat solid and no injuries? And also Bobrovsky, he's. I mean, depending on the seasons, the way he plays, it's all a question about uh, health and performance from everybody. Well, is the team slightly worse? Sure. But do I see them like missing the playoffs or a wild card spot? I mean, I highly doubt it. I see them as a a top two team. Uh, regardless. But you know, uh, I it's tough to say. I mean, it's something that we're gonna have to see towards the end of the season. That's where I think with also what's his name coming back. Sorry, I'm having a brain fart here. Anthony Duclair coming back will probably help out the team even more. And like Colby said, next season they're gonna have 5 million off of buyout dead cap, which they could probably go re-sign someone else and help out the team even more.
And what are your thoughts, Colby?
I cut out a little. Yeah, my Wi-Fi kind of cut out when you were asking me the question. Could you ask that question again?
Yeah, no problem. It was basically in terms of, how strong the Atlantic got with the likes of the Senators and Detroit Red Wings. Um, does this really hurt, Florida's chances at being a top three seed in the Atlantic? And if they do fall down into the standings, obviously that first round pick is going to be a lot more valuable for the Calgary Flames. And those people that were clamoring over the fact that this is an overpayment by the Florida Panthers, would would you think that that would be more justified if that were to happen? And do you think it's likely that the Florida Panthers do fall down in the standings?
Well, I think Florida has a lot of guys that are equipped to step up with
Yeah, he's cutting out.
what they lost. Step up and be that number one pair defenseman that's going to replace Mackenzie Wieger. So I think they have a guy that fills the void there. It's just about depth, which they have a mixture of young guys like Lucas Carlson, who played 40 games last year, did a pretty good job before Florida traded for Ben Sherratt and Robert Haig and signed for Terry Lindbohm to try to get some depth there. But he's a guy that can step up and maybe even potentially take Forsling's spot on the second pair to be that kind of young guy that you can rely on. Nice little two-way game and can move the puck. And then looking at the bottom pair on the left side, is it's really the left side that takes the hit there. On the right, you still have Radko Gudas and Brandon Montour, which are two quality defensemen. Montour is a guy that can quarterback your second unit. He's done a fairly good job there. But you're looking at your candidates for the left side. You have Mark Stahl and Michael Delzato, which are veteran acquisitions that may or may not do anything. They'll be solid enough to log some minutes there if one of the young guys can't be an answer there. So that's fine. But you're looking at other guys like Matt Kierstead, which was a college free agent they got who logged about 20 to 30 games at the NHL level, or I think it was 17 games or something actually. But Matt Kierstead looked fine in the time where he got a chance. And then you're also looking at John Ludwig, who is a bigger defenseman who lays the body, 21 years old, had a few good NHL training camps that, I mean, he missed a lot of time due to injury, but the organization feels like he's ready. And if he can make that jump and impress in training camp, maybe he can be a guy that slides in as well and brings value to that defense as well.
And let's take some comments from the chat because I know there's a lot going on. Let's see here. Okay, so this is in regards of Matthew Tkachuk. So dirtiest player in the league by a long shot. He's going to kill somebody on the ice. One of these days, mark my words, he'll be there chewing on his mouth guard while the unfortunate player dies. To follow that up, he clarifies, sorry for a dark comment like this, gentlemen, but this is a dark player and dark human being. Uh, hmm. What are your thoughts on those comments regarding Matthew Tkachuk?
I I don't think he's gonna kill a guy. He's not that ruthless of a person. And I mean, just talking to people that know the guy, I mean, he plays hard. He'll agitate a few guys. He'll make some hits, but he's not a terrible guy. He's not gonna go out and do that. I think that's a little bit off base to say that he's gonna kill someone.
And Chris, what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, yeah, I don't think he's gonna kill anybody, but I mean, I know he meant it as an exaggeration, but yeah, I mean, this guy's gonna, cause a lot of fights. He's very like, not very liked around the league. Him and his brother. Um, like I said, he reminds me of the Bash brothers. From the Mighty Ducks movies. He's that kind of player. He's there to cause trouble. He's there to score goals. He's there to make hits, and he's there to be clutch. So, that's the kind of player that they're getting.
Yeah, and we have Vogan Poetry who is on the opposite end, who says Kachuk isn't dirty. His trash talk is next level though, myth. And well, Whedon Wrestling is from Calgary, so we're pretty sure he's a fan of the Flames. So uh, very you know obviously, like we were saying before, he didn't mean it in like that, that in bad regards. He just was saying it in a more jokative way, but he was just trying to like reinstate that he's a very physical player. He's a guy that essentially will do anything possible to get into the other team's skin and try to cause penalties for that team, take advantage of that and try to score on the power play. In terms of like the Calgary line, right? We had Lindholm, Gujo, and Kachuk at the first line, one of the best lines in the league. Now two of those players are gone. Will Johnny Huberdeau and Elias Lindholm have that chemistry like those two players did with him?
Yeah, it seems like Jonathan Huberdeau really has chemistry with whoever he plays with. He's a guy that makes plays and can find a guy on one end and whatnot. So, I mean, in Florida, Huberdeau was playing with a lot of different guys when injuries happened. Like, he was mainly on Sam Bennett's line, and he was a play driver on that line and helped find Sam Bennett in front of the net or helped Anthony Duclair get into space. So he's a guy that can really make plays on his own. So really, he can get chemistry with anyone. Like he had an extended period of time where he played with Anton Lundell, and even that looked great. So I think that Huberto is fine no matter where you put him.
And Chris, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think Huberto is going to have the same chemistry with Lindholm as Gujo and Kachuk? Do you think that's still going to be a functional first line, or I mean, one of the best lines, as good as that line in previous seasons with the new replacement in Huberto?
I mean, will it be just as good? I mean, I think it's going to be somewhat even. I don't see it being, because Johnny Hockey, Johnny Gaudreau is like an insane player. Like, I can't really compare. But Lindholm and Huberto having a connection. I mean, yeah, it's possible. Like Colby mentioned, he has a connection with pretty much, anybody he plays with. Uh, but to be honest, I'm not really worried. At that, usually a guy of that talent, of that elite talent, and of that magnitude of you know, being a star in the NHL, you kind of connect with everybody. I mean, like, let's face it here. I mean, like Johnny Gaudreau, Huberto, Barkov. I mean, whoever they play with, they're gonna get points, right? Talent is talent, no matter who or where you play. So
And in terms of like, we're talking about the Atlantic being stronger. Florida still has a very good team. Like I was saying before, first line projection: Verhage, Barkov, Kachuk. That's a fantastic line. Second line, you have Rudolph's Balsers, Sam Bennett, Reinhardt. Bennett and Reinhardt are very offensively minded players, very good players, very good additions to the Florida Panthers in recent years. They add Nick Cousins and Colin White. So I want to get your thoughts on that. Nick Cousins is by no means is a superstar player, but I think he's a very reliable third line player. But the big question is Colin White. He was a former first round pick, didn't really work out in Ottawa, got bought out. There's a lot of rumors that maybe the Montreal Canes were going to sign him. Does not sign there. He goes with Florida. Do you think he's going to have a resurgence just like Bennett did and also Anthony Duclair?
Oh yeah, the thing is they have a lot of guys that have a floor as a solid checking forward for the fourth line, and if one of them, which is Balsers, Nick Cousins, and Colin White, if any of these guys cash in on the opportunity and break out offensively, that would be great for the Panthers. But there are also other options in the organizations that can give them a little bit more of a flavor offensively as well. Like the Panthers signed Anton Levchi from over in Finland, and he led the Finnish Elite League in points with 61, 55 games. This is a guy that played on Tapara, which is the team that Barkov co-owns as well. So I think if he has a good camp, he has just as good of a chance as anybody to make the team. and even possibly make the top six. So I mean, there's a lot of options there, and I think a guy like Colin White has a chance to break out offensively, and so does a guy like Rudolph Balcers and even Nick Cousins. But if they don't, they can just slot into that third line checking forward type role, and they can work just fine.
And in terms of the Calgary Flames, the way their lineup's gonna look, you have Tyler Toffoli jumping in to Kachuk's spot. We all know he was able to play first line minutes with the Montreal Canadiens. He was very good at doing so with Cole Caulfield and Nick Suzuki. But by any means, they're not a bad team. They're going to be very good in the Pacific Division. You still have Andrew Manjapane. You have Backlund. You have Blake Coleman. We're expecting Jakob Pelletier to be a full timer. Hopefully, Sean Monahan has a bounce back season. He's been kind of declining in the last couple of seasons, and they really need his presence, especially with Kachuk and Gujo being gone. He was part of that main core for many years. He's the last remaining piece. And then you look at the defense, you have Noah Hannafin, Anderson, and now there's a, you know, people projecting Mackenzie Wieger on the second line with Tanev. I think Wieger is probably going to jump in to a first line pairing with possibly Anderson, or maybe we could see an Anderson and Wieger pairing on the power play since they're both very good offensively. But this is still a very competitive team regardless of those two losses, and it's not even. I mean, yes, they're losses, but at least the Flames GM Brad Treliving did something about it, because I think a lot of other GMs would try to like kind of patch up the holes, but he actually tried to get players that were not just elite, but some may consider Jonathan Huberdeau a franchise player. So he did something there. So they're still going to be very competitive, and I wanted to have your thoughts, you guys, on the Flames lineup. Do you think it's still very competitive, or do you think that it's not as great as last season's?
Yeah, I think the Flames are very competitive there, and they have a lot of pieces that can move up and play very well. And you have a coach in Daryl Sutter who has a very good defensive system that will get out there and grind out those loser points, which were very important in the regular season to kind of cling on to a playoff spot, and then be able to have the fortitude to play in the playoffs as well. But you have some dynamic players there with Lindholm, Mangiapane, Huberdeau, obviously, but the real value comes with that defense core as well. They have one of the better defense cores in the league already, and then they're adding Mackenzie Weegar to it. So really, I think they're very set in stone there. And Jacob Markstrom has also developed into one of the better goaltenders in the league. So really, they're a very well-rounded group. And although they're not as top-heavy offensively as they were last season, with both Gaudreau and Tkachuk in the fold, I think this is still a very, very competitive team.
And Chris, what are your thoughts on the Flames heading into the season?
I mean, we already know how it is on this show when it comes to defense and the playoffs when it comes to me. Listen, they have one of the best defensive coaches. They just added I think, a very talented defenseman. I mean, like Colby said, sometimes, he gets a little bit of hate because of the mistakes he's done in the playoffs. But, it's still a very great defenseman all around. Uh, and, just adding a better defenseman to already a great defensive core with a great defensive minded coach, I think is a recipe, for success. And yeah, I mean, they're not as, powerful on the offense, which is kind of what caused them to lose. I think against Edmonton
Well,
was
also poor goaltending from Markstrom was not
poor
great.
goaltending too. But I mean, he played well during the season, and he played well he played somewhat decent against Dallas. So yeah, the goaltending too. But the scoring was missing, I think, against Edmonton. Uh, but who knows? Like I said, some of these guys might get moved. At the trade deadline. Huberdeau maybe doesn't want to resign, and they make a move for maybe someone else or some picks. So who knows what's gonna happen? But I mean, if they're gonna stick around, and if the team's gonna stay the same, I think they're pretty competitive. I don't, I see them ending up at the same spot as they did last season. I don't see them decreasing anymore.
And we have a couple comments from a Calgary fan saying our defense is filthy. So someone's very optimistic heading into the season, and also stating that Markstrom will appreciate the D upgrade. Um, yeah, I mean, like we were stating before, Mackenzie Weegar was a much needed upgrade on defense ever since Giordano parted ways with the Calgary Flames, and then Huberdeau being the Johnny Gaudreau replacement. The thing is, though, since they have still salary cap available, if they want to replace Grit, but also get someone who's able to have a very high level of production in terms of offense, is it possible they may sign Nazem Kadri? They might make a run at that. Am I just like thinking outside the box? Is it too much, or is it a realistic possibility?
Well, I mentioned that early on in the video. I mean, yeah, I see it being a very strong possibility, especially with the amount of cap space that they have available. I believe it's 9.3 million or 9.5 million around there. 9.3 million. I just checked. So I mean, yeah, it's a strong possibility. I don't know how much Nazem Kadri is looking for. Do I think he's worth $9 million? I mean, I see him more around like 7.5, 8. Uh, but it's very possible. I mean, Calgary is one of the few teams with a pretty large amount of cap space, and Nazem Kadri is one of the big fish still remaining. So, I mean, I see it possible being a possibility. If they really want to go full on defense, I mean, might as well bring on Klingberg at that point. But I don't think that's gonna happen. So I do see Kadri, going to the Flames. Well, as a possibility.
Yeah, and there's a lot of rumors saying the reason why Kadri hasn't signed yet is because his number one choice is to go back to Colorado. But also teams that want to get Kadri signed are lacking, cap space as well. So there's a standstill, and I think that goes with Klimberg as well. I actually thought that before the Mackenzie Weegar deal, that the Calgary Flames are potentially going to make a run at Klimberg to try to replace Giordano. I know people are saying that it's Anderson. I think he's very good. I just think he's not there yet, and if they wanted someone um, that was established and a little bit older, Klimberg would have been a good option. But getting Wieger in that deal, um, fills up a hole. But also, we have an interesting comment here saying one difference: I prefer that Hubie's a lot bigger than Goudreau. Does size really matter?
As a
Well, the
short guy, no.
thing, the thing with Huberdeau and Gaudreau was that I think if you're looking at a guy with size that really uses it and plays a good two-way game with that size, you're getting a lot with it. And while Huberto was steadily improving in Florida at doing that, he wasn't quite there yet. And Johnny Gaudreau did provide a lot of value in getting things done in the defensive zone and creating plays out of the defensive zone. So really, I think that's where Johnny Gaudreau kind of edges out a guy like Jonathan Huberto. But under a coach like Daryl Sutter, that will help kind of open that part up of Jonathan Huberto's game. And I mean, it already helps that it was something that Huberto was already looking to address before playing for Daryl Sutter. So when you're a guy that was kind of getting into his stride there, he was playing on the penalty kill at points, mixed results there. So when you're already committed to improving there, and then you're going to a team that has a coach that is willing to help you there and runs a system that predicates on defense, I think that will help Huberto refine that part of his game as well. So you got to kind of look at it both ways there, but it has potential.
And before we end the episode, there's one topic that a lot of people are talking about in terms of this that's very interesting. And I was attending a audio podcast hosted by Lip Sweater on Twitter, and a lot of people were mentioning how Matthew Tkachuk and Jonathan Huberdeau are no shows in the playoffs. And obviously we mentioned that Mackenzie Weegar was not that great as well. But what are your thoughts on that? And like, can Kachuk be the difference maker in um, finally beating the Tampa Bay Lightning? because I think he would be a fantastic player in terms of that, in terms of like being in the Battle of Florida. I think his grit, his personality, what he's able to do. People are thinking that him and Pat Maroon are literally gonna scrap and go crazy with each other. Chris, what are your thoughts on that?
I think we lost Colby, but I'll answer that one. I think here, I mean, Rene Bois actually in the comment section was gonna mention what I just was gonna say. Tkachuk is not better than Huberdeau, but is more aggressive type, which Florida missed in the last playoffs. I mean, listen, when it comes in the playoffs, being aggressive is and being clutch and is what counts. I mean, scoring goals matters, sure. I mean, being those that level of eliteness and those kind of guys, you expect production coming out of you. But the playoffs is not just about scoring goals. It's also about uh, making the right plays. Like, let's face it, playoff games are not gonna. I know we've seen some, this year being 9-7 or 7-1 or 7-0, but realistically, you're looking at games that finish 2-1, 3-2, and usually in overtime. So, it's it's the fact that people that mentioned they lacked scoring. I mean, listen, I don't think that to be true. I mean, not both players haven't had the longest you know playoff experience. I think Huberto went to the playoffs how many times? Colby, maybe if you could help me out on that one.
Yeah, he made it 3 times if you don't count the bubble. He made it in 2016. Didn't get a playoff experience for 6 years, save for the bubble where they got knocked out in the qualifier by the Islanders. But other than 2016, the only 2 times he made the playoffs were 2021, where he had 10 points in that 6 game series against the Lightning, and then you had last season. So those were the only 3 times he made the playoffs. So there wasn't a lot of experience in that group to begin with.
I know you cut out one point, but I was asking. I don't know if you heard the question I was asking, but I was attending Lip Sweater audio podcast on Twitter, and the whole like main topic at one point was how Kachuk was not a playoff performer, but also Jonathan Huberdeau was not a playoff performer. Do you think that is a right statement, or you think they're being a little bit too harsh in terms of judging their playoff performance? You think that's more of a team problem than a player problem?
Yeah, it definitely is more of a team problem than a player problem. And if you look at the style of game Kachuk plays, I think he's a guy that can very much contribute. And if he's around the right pieces and there's some pucks flying on net, he's able to put them in. And he's able to drive play, cause chaos. So, absolutely, I think he's able to contribute in the playoffs.
And do you think he's going to be the defining factor to beat the Tampa Bay Lightnings in a playoff series once and for all?
Yeah, I mean, when you're looking at how Florida played against Tampa last year, the one thing they missed was that type of play driver that can get to the front of the net, get to rebounds, get those grindy goals out in front of the net. And Florida was missing that when Mason Marchment was out of the lineup. Mason Marchment was the type of guy that can drive the net and get things done. And that's what Florida was missing in that series. So now you're getting a guy in Matthew Tkachuk that can do all the fancy stuff that Jonathan Huberdeau can do, and he can grind it out and get those type of goals you need to against a guy like Andrei Vasilevsky. He has the size to drive in, get it done. So I think he does contribute a lot to beating a team like Tampa. He's a guy that can frustrate a lot of their guys. So I think it's a good move that brings you closer.
And can we see a potential Pat Maroon and Matthew Tkachuk showdown?
I think
I don't.
he's cutting out there. I don't know if he heard, but I definitely could see that happening.
Colby, do you hear us?
Yeah, you guys cut out.
Yeah, I was saying, do you think there's a high possibility of seeing a Pat Maroon and Matthew Tkachuk showdown?
Oh yeah, for sure. I can see those two getting into it.
Perfect. Anyways, guys, we're gonna answer two more live chat comments before we end today's episode. So Mike Regner is saying that Kachuk is a poor skater. Unfortunately, when the other team is fast, he disappears. We also have General saying Chucky's a streaky player if he lets his emotions get the best of him. So it seems like they do agree with the fact that Kachuk, kind of disappears at times when needed, when he has to be when he's called upon, essentially. And we have one comment here that I like a lot from Famous Dex. Best podcast ever. If you're not subbed yet, what are you doing? Guys, we have a giveaway, like we mentioned in the chat here. All subscribers will have a chance to win a free jersey of choice August 15. The ultimate goal is to hit 1,000 subs. So if you're not subbed yet, please sub to our podcast. We are very close to 900 subscribers. So please, guys, if you can help us out with that, that would be fantastic. The channel has been growing immensely in our first year. I can't imagine what's going to happen the second year. We have had great guests like Colby come on, Julian Mackenzie. You had the win column as well. Yeah, Data 72, that Leafs fan, Peter Alper of the Insta Canadians, and many more people. And we're hoping that we could get you back on, Colby, in the near future to cover the Florida Panthers, because it seems like it's going to be a very interesting season moving forward.
Yeah, of course, anytime. It's definitely going to be an interesting year for sure.
Perfect. And we just want to say thank you to Vogan Poetry and Renee. We really appreciate that. Every sub matters, and you guys matter, because without your your subscribers, we wouldn't be able to be at the point that we are in our early careers, essentially. And also thank you, General, as well. If you guys like more topics like this, where we get a host and we talk about big situations that happened or are about to happen, please let us know in the comment section below. Colby, once again, thank you so much for attending today. We hope that you had a fantastic time doing this. It's always fun having somebody who covers a team when we're talking about a specific team as a main topic. So we hope you had a great time. And guys, uh, don't forget to like the video. Don't forget to share this to any Florida Panther fans or Calgary Flame fans. If you haven't subbed, like I was saying, please sub. And it's going to be very exciting to announce the winner August 15. And with that being said, have a nice night, guys, and we'll see you soon. Hopefully, another big deal happens like this trade. If not, I guess we're just going to have an extended vacation. Thank you so much, guys.